Okay, Chooks, you're on. Yes, you're on, Chooks.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Could you speak a little louder?
Welcome to this program once again. Good evening, everybody from Nigeria. Good afternoon, good morning. Wherever you are joining us from. So excited to welcome you again to this Japanese Professional Development Series, which we have been doing on research. I'm so excited we are doing the first, the fifth time since this series began. And, we've been growing from strength to strength. I'm so happy that Professor Okubo, who has been with us, is also here with us today, irrespective of the stress of work. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. My name is Dr. and I am grateful to be moderating. So I'm happy we are starting exactly at 4:05, and we are hoping that.
Sorry, Chooks, we can't quite hear you. Can you speak a little louder? Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
That is perfect. You have to start again.
Okay. Well, I just have to thank you all for joining. Good evening, everybody from Nigeria, and good afternoon, good morning, elsewhere, wherever you're joining from. My name is Dr. Quantitative, and this is Jackson's Professional Development Series, Seminar Series. We've been dealing with the subject matter of mixed methods research. In the last 4 months, this is the 5th month. It's been a very great pleasure learning from the experts, both in Nigeria and abroad. It's my pleasure to be moderating this session again, and I thank Professor Mba for doing all the coordinations. As it is, we always use about 1 hour to 1 hour, 30 minutes to get everything done, and I'd like to slightly give us the house rules that will guide our operations this evening. The first thing is that, as usual, I would like to be as calm as possible, as noiseless as possible. As you enter into the virtual room, we expect that you mute yourself if you're not muted already. When there's a need to speak, you can unmute yourself. So like I said, the program will run for about 1 hour, 1 hour, 30 minutes thereabout. Presentations will take a maximum of 15 minutes per person. And then at the end of it, we shall have questions and answers from the participants. And then concluding part of it will be another 10 minutes. So we have today quite a lot of experts from Nigeria and overseas. We are so excited to have people from the United States, from Ghana. In Nigeria here, we have people from Ilori, University of Ilori, and Maiduguri. So it's a loaded program, and I welcome you. And I assure you that at the end of it, it is going to be worth the while. So let me begin by saying that we will do just a little introduction of our speakers. But before then, let me just run through our program, which is what we just started. After the housekeeping, I'll do the introduction of speakers, and then presentations will start. Like I said, 10 to 15 minutes. When the presenter exceeds 12 minutes, I'm likely going to give him a nudge to warn him. And then after the presentations, we'll have a question and answers. followed by a vote of thanks. And then I'll tell you the next steps after today. So let's begin. Our first presenter today, as usual, is our very senior colleague who has been around all these years. Most of us here know him. He doesn't need much introduction. But suffice to say that Professor Okibo started out way back, over 35 years ago, from the University of Nigeria, Department of Mass Communication, where he taught all of us, most of us, in what we're doing today. From there, he became the first registrar of APCON. APCON is Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria, and set it up and then continued to run till today. And after that, Professor Kibo moved to the United States, where he had been doing a great job and looking into Nigeria from time to time to make sure that his boys are doing well, just like what he has been doing with us in the last 5 months. So, Prof, you're welcome again. As usual, thank you for joining. Thank you for doing a great job for us. God bless you. The next person is Professor Ido Shobawale. I don't know whether he's here yet, but he also is somebody that doesn't need introduction, having played his role in the industry once upon at the Department of Mass Communication, University of Lagos, once the Commissioner for Information, introduced the concept of research as a very great component of governance. He did that so well in Lagos, and most of the things he did, particularly the book he wrote, Scientific Journalism, continues to help people in their research methods today. That's Professor Ido Shobawale. He was also the head of Department of Mass Communication at Covenant University and one or two other places. I welcome you, sir, if you're here. God bless you. We also have, just a minute. We have Megan Sobe-Cohen of Regis University in the United States of America. I think when the presentations start to be made, I will probably do more discussion or more on the presenters. The next person that will also be speaking to us today is Kayode Lambe. He's from University of Ilorin here in Nigeria. And then Professor Romy Gomez is of the University of Illinois, Chicago. I will also run through his citation at the appropriate time. And then Oman Nuhu Gapsiso, University of Maiduguri. He has been with us all this while, so he also doesn't need much introduction. And when it's time for him to do a summary and conclusion, I'll probably say a little bit more about him. So for now, that is all I can say about our presenters. And if we are ready, I think we can move into the first presentation by Professor Charles Okibo. Thank you, Charles, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Chuks. And good evening to all my friends there in Nigeria. It's my great pleasure to be with you again today. Every month, we look forward to the first Friday when we get together and share our ideas of how we can be more resourceful in doing research regarding communication in Nigeria. We started with fundraising and capital campaigns, and then moved on to talk about mixed methods. We discussed an overview of mixed methods, indicating that research shouldn't just use one method only. Each method is valuable. I think everybody should mute themselves, otherwise there'll be too much static. Research is best done using quantitative and qualitative methods. And that's the sense in which we say mixed methods is ideal. And we had told you that it's not mixed methods just because you have quantitative and qualitative. It's mixed methods because you've decided that the qualitative methods will complement the quantitative methods, which will balance the approach you are using. And so today, we'll be talking about quantitative research methods, knowing that last month we talked about qualitative. My presentation will give you a broad overview of quantitative methods, why we do it, its role in mixed methods. And then Ido Shobawale will jump in and illustrate from the research he has done. So quantitative methods, what it is. Next slide, please. It is the kind of research where you use numbers. It's not qualitative. With qualitative, we are dealing with descriptions. We are dealing with participant observation. We are dealing with in-depth personal interviews. It could be critical analysis. But with quantitative, we are dealing with numbers. That's the key difference between qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative requires us to measure. Often we have to have statistics and engage in testing of hypotheses. So with quantitative research, we measure, use numbers, use statistics, and sometimes people think it's more difficult, but indeed it's not. It's not any more difficult than qualitative. There are many approaches to quantitative methods. Next slide, please. But we regard quantitative as the other hand of research. And in this case, we expect you to measure the phenomena you are examining. And measurement means attaching numbers, indicating how tall the person is, how much money they earn, or how often they read newspapers. So with quantitative research, we're always using numbers to determine how much prevalence we have of the phenomenon we are interested in. There are 4 levels of measurement. The first level is nominal, which is basically naming the characteristics. For instance, in survey research, we can describe our subjects as male or female. Male is not necessarily better than female. So when you indicate that male is 1 and female is 2, it doesn't mean that female is more important than male. It's just nominal. It's naming them. It's basic categories, or what they call basic labeling. Indeed, it's not even measurement as such, because it's just indicating where one belongs. The next level is ordinal, which is what we do when we rank. We can rank students with regard to the level of achievement they have attained, how many years they have been in school. First year students will be 1, second year students will be 2, third year students will be 3, fourth year students will be 4. So ranking is a form of measurement. It shows the order. The third level of measurement is interval. And this is actually where we engage in calculations. With nominal and ordinal, it's not necessary for us to calculate. But with interval, we can calculate because there are equal appearing intervals between the numbers. But there is no true 0 point. A good example is temperature. There is no time when you say there is no temperature. So the 0 there doesn't really mean anything. Where the 0 is meaningful is at the ratio scale, which is the highest level of measurement. And at the ratio scale, you have all the characteristics of the interval, but you also have a true 0. A good example is your score in an exam. If you scored 0, it means you got nothing. But if you scored 10, it means you got 10 points better than the person who scored 0. So that's a true measurement scale. Next slide, please. So with quantitative methods, there are many advantages. The most important advantage is that it makes it possible for us to be precise in our measurements. We can say there are 200 girls and 400 boys. It's precise measurement. Secondly, the measurements are more likely to be accurate if we take our time to measure what we observe using reliable instruments. So accuracy is a good characteristic of quantitative methods. Thirdly, they are predictable. It's easy for us to repeat. It's easy for us to predict what will happen when we have numbers. Same thing with replication. A study done in Chicago can be replicated in a lorry if it's quantitative. And the results we get can be compared with each other. And then fifthly, it's possible for us to test hypotheses and determine the power scale or the level of significance. It can be at 0.05 or 0.01 or 0.10, depending on how important we think the results will be. So quantitative research methods have superior benefits over qualitative. Let's talk about scope. Last month, when we talked about qualitative research, we told you there are more than 23 different methods for doing qualitative research, including in-depth personal interviews, participant observation, critical analysis, historical studies. But for quantitative, there are also as many as 23 different methods. Most important very often is survey method, which is when you use a questionnaire to elicit responses from participants or from respondents. And then there is the experimental method, where you have two groups, the control group and the experimental group, and it's possible for us to determine effects. It is only through experiments that we can determine the effects of having something or not having it. In many cases, when we supervise student projects, we see students using effects when in fact they are not doing experiments. They talk about the effect of without doing experiments. That's not appropriate. Experiments are ideal because we can use it to determine the impact or the effect of doing something or not doing something. Another method is content analysis. And today, Ayode will talk about it, reporting on what he did with Megan Sobel. So content analysis is where we count the number of stories, try to describe them using numbers. And in that case, we can make comparisons or try to predict what will happen in future. And then there is multivariate analysis, where we are using, as the term tells you, more than one variable. Multivariate, it means more than one variable. In many serious research, we are looking at multiple variables. What is the confluence? What is the interaction between age and gender and level of education and religion with regard to whatever we are looking at? So multivariate analysis is very important. Factor analysis is another quantitative method, very interesting method, which in fact we will devote one webinar just talking about factor analysis. But the simple way to explain it is the kind of research where we want to parsimoniously describe a phenomenon using only a few factors, a few dimensions, instead of 200 or more than 300 variables. Next slide, please. So you can see there are many ways of doing quantitative research, but they all begin with measurement. As I already told you, the simplest means of measurement is the nominal scale. And above the nominal is the ordinal. And above the ordinal is the interval. And then the final is the ratio scale. These scales of measurement can be categorized as parametric or non-parametric. Again, we will devote one webinar to explaining the differences between parametric and non-parametric. All statistics can be categorized as parametric or non-parametric. The difference is that with parametric, It means we know the value of the population. It means we are more accurate, we are more pure in the measurement, and we are using interval and ratio measures only. Non-parametric, on the other hand, means we are more loose in our use of statistics, and we are not necessarily looking at population numbers. Parametric is ideal when we are doing multivariate analysis. For example, analysis of variance or t-test or multiple regression or factor analysis. Non-parametric is ideal when we are doing simpler nominal and rank ordered analysis. For example, chi-square or test of significance or Mann-Whitney U. These are simple tests where we don't necessarily look at the population parameters. And we can use small size sample. That's the major difference. With parametric, we are looking at the population, and therefore we use larger sample size. With non-parametric, we don't necessarily have to use large sample size. And therefore we can use small numbers. That's the major difference between these two. But we like to devote more time to explain this at a slower pace so that students will know when to use parametric and when to use non-parametric. Let's go on to the next slide, please. The next slide talks about the value of quantitative research in mixed methods. As I told you during the introduction, mixed methods means we are using qualitative and quantitative. And so we can't have mixed methods without quantitative. It is the second leg of mixed methods. And when we use quantitative in mixed methods, we are paying attention to precision. We want to be more accurate in our results. We want to be able to test hypotheses. We want to be able to replicate the studies that other people had done. And then we are paying attention to reliability and validity. For these reasons, it's important for us to use quantitative methods when we do mixed methods research. Next slide, please. How do we do quantitative research? What is the way we do quantitative research? And at this stage, I will invite Idowu Sobowale to take over and explain the steps we take in doing quantitative research. If Idowu is here. He was having problems. He was having problems logging on.
Okay, before Prof will come on, let me once again introduce him properly. Professor Idowu Sobowale, like many of us know, was twice acting head at the University of Lagos Department of Mass Communication, and later he headed the School of Communication and Media Studies at the Lagos State University, Olabisi Onabanjo University, and Covenant University, both in Ogun State in Nigeria. He also has had a stint at McPherson University in Ogun State, where he's still on the faculty. Professor Idowu Sobowale introduced and popularized opinion polling in Nigeria in 1978 after returning from Syracuse University in the United States of America, from where he did his MS and PhD programs in newspaper and public communication, respectively. He teaches communication research, communication theory, and scientific journalism. He authored Scientific Journalism, among other important publications. I want to welcome my professor and teacher, Idowu Sobowale. Okay.
Looks like he has a technical difficulty. Professor Kibo, would you mind carrying on?
Okay. Well, I talked with him about 15 minutes ago, and he told me he was logging on, but having some problems. He just recently moved to New York from Canada. And so, I don't know, what the problem might be, but yeah, we can cover him because Ido was going to talk about the methods for doing research, for doing quantitative research. As Chuk said, Ido is reputable for the use of quantitative research, particularly opinion surveys, which he popularized in Nigeria when he came back from Syracuse in 1978. Many of you who were his students then will remember him carrying computer cars all across campus. So Idowu is a foremost user of quantitative research methods. So for today, we will talk about the steps, the methods. And according to him, he was going to allay your fears that quantitative research is difficult. He didn't like mathematics in high school. But when he went to the university and found that quantitative methods using measurement and computers are not really the same as mathematics, he fell in love with quantitative research and has been teaching it very successfully and at the same time consulting in that area. So the first thing for you to note from Idowu's presentation is that quantitative research is valuable, but not any more difficult than qualitative research. Let's move on to the next slide, please. The types of research methodology that we deal with very often involve us to categorize methods as qualitative or quantitative, both of them being used together to yield mixed methods, which is what we preach in this seminar series. So with the methods, very often we deal with survey research, which I already hinted you about. It is the use of questionnaires to get information from a cross-section of the population. Content analysis, ideally, this is the most common method of research dealing with communication, because communication often deals with messages. Even when it deals with sources of those messages, we are thinking about what did the sources tell us. Then there is observation and experimentation. You can see that there is some overlap in what I said and what Idowu is saying. It's because quantitative research methods are the same, whether you learn them in Syracuse as I did, or in Southern Illinois as I did, whether you taught them in Unilag as I did, or in UNN as I did. It's the same thing. It's like people speaking one language. So we expect you to be using more quantitative research because, as I said, it's not more difficult than qualitative. Let's go to the next slide, please. What are the steps we take in doing quantitative research? Well, the first step is for us to understand the issue. If you don't understand the issue, you won't be able to design a good instrument. So the starting point is for you to understand the issue. The second point is for you to draw a questionnaire that is appropriate for eliciting the kind of information, that's what we call the quantitative data, that you will analyze so that you can draw your answers from the analysis. And the next point is for you to draw up the questions and the interviews that you will use. When we look at what Kayode, Mustafa, and Megan Sobo will present on content analysis, you find that it's important for you to come up with a coding of categories. What are the various ways we can code the content so we can capture the essence of the messages? And then from coding, you analyze your results and come up with conclusions. Next slide, please. Who says it's important for you to train your interviewers. In the case of content analysis, train the coders. Why? So that they all have a common perception of the message content. When one person says an item is news, everybody in the coding team should see it as news. And one person says that news story is positive, everybody in the coding team should see it as positive. If you don't have a successful training exercise, then you won't have valid data, because some items will be coded differently than others, depending on who is coding. So it's important for us to train our coders when we are doing content analysis, because with coding, even if you have a coding team, it will look like it's only one person who is doing the coding. At the end of the training, it's important for us to test how well we have internalized the training that we have been subjected to. If you don't have a high enough level of agreement among the coders after the training, you have to go back and repeat the training again and again until you have a high enough agreement. What do we mean by high enough agreement? As much as possible, all the coders should agree on more than 90% of the items. If it's less than 90, repeat the training and make sure that they all see the content the same way. Next slide, please. Processing data. Following your coding of the data, you can now take the data to these days we use laptops that have SPSS or SAS, or you can use Excel. Excel is as good enough as any other for doing content analysis and finalizing the results of your surveys. But following coding, you then use the computer to analyze your results. The computer is a magic machine that will, in less than 30 seconds, tell you what you have in a huge data set. Depending on how you coded the materials, the computer will tell you the kinds of stories that you studied, the sources of those stories, how long those stories were, the direction of those stories. It's for you in selecting your coding guide to choose what you think is ideal, what will capture the questions you are asking. Next slide, please. According to the above steps will determine the reliability and validity of your results. Reliability refers to the consistency in coming up with the same results each time you repeat this. Recall that I told you that one of the advantages of quantitative research is replicability. It's possible for us to replicate what they did in Unilag, in Nsukka, or what Megan did in Colorado. We can replicate that in Unilag or in LASU or in Ilori. So if it's reliable, it will mean that in many cases, we will be coming up with similar results. How about validity? Validity refers to the accuracy of our concepts to capture the true essence of what is contained in the content. So validity is accuracy, it's truth, different from reliability, which is repeating the same thing and getting the same results. Validity, on the other hand, is referring to the accuracy. It's referring to the honesty. When we measure height, are we using a ruler or are we using a scale? A ruler measures height, a scale measures weight, and that refers to validity. Who says the researcher does not require complex statistical tools, such as multiple regression or factor analysis. It's enough for you to just report frequencies and percentages, but ideally, you should go one step further and look at relationships, because that is the stuff of interesting research. You should go beyond just telling us what happened and talk about what are the relationships between what happened and the messages in the media. Is there any relationship between voting patterns and characteristics of voters? Is there any relationship between geography and the way people voted? So ideally, you should go beyond mere simple frequencies and percentages and look for relationships that can be teased out using cross-tabulation or cross breaks or simple t-test if you are looking at differences between groups. And then Idowu recommends 2x2 cross-tabulations or bivariate analysis. This is the simplest you will ever have. 2 by 2, something like gender and political party. Gender refers to men and women. Political party refers to APC, PDP. It's likely that next year it will be, instead of 2 by 2, it will be 2 by 3, because you might be looking at gender, men and women, and 3 political parties, APC, PDP, and Labour Party. It's possible to have larger scales, 2 by 5, 2 by 6, or 4 by 10. But the larger your scale, the more complicated your interpretation. It's not just getting the results, but it's important for you to be able to interpret them and tell us what they mean. Next slide, please. Yeah, it talks about interpretation. And once you have your results, it's important for you to interpret. If you can't make sense of your results, it's wasted time and effort and money. The essence of research is for us to make sense of phenomenon. And that sense making comes from our being able to interpret. And the task is crucial because that is the essence. And in interpreting, you look at what the literature review had told you about the nature of this phenomenon, and then put that in the context of the data you collected, and use your own knowledge of the setting, the people who provided you the data to make sense of what they said. So interpretation is critical. Without interpretation, we will have wasted our time. Is it possible for 2 people to have 2 different interpretations of the same data? Yes, of course, depending on how you are looking at it. If you are a socialist, it's possible you have a different interpretation of data that a capitalist will see differently. And so interpretation is critical. But even at that stage, you, the researcher, will have the prerogative of being able to present your findings in the way that it makes sense to you, because you are a thinking human being. And again, this is why we recommend mixed methods, because quantitative data will give you a certain sense of what is happening, but you also need qualitative data to be able to understand this in the context of the people involved. Qualitative is ideal for probing. Quantitative is very good for precision. And so ideally, we expect you to be able to combine them both. Let's move on and get ready to conclude. How do we do quantitative research? Who says over the last 41 years that he has been doing public opinion polling. As we told you, he was the one who popularized it. Nigerians are famous for not paying enough attention to social research. Elections are around the corner again, and we don't see too many results of surveys, of experiments, of credible research that will give us a sense of what to expect. Who also says public opinion is critical in understanding how the ASU crisis can be resolved. There are not many researches from us showing what students think. How do what students think differ from what teachers think? How about parents? How about government officials? As you can tell, there have been some disagreement between education and labor. And it is for communication research using quantitative and qualitative methods to hammer out the details about our perceptions of the ASU federal government debate about whether the strike should be called off voluntarily by ASU, or whether the courts can be used to stop them by force. Who says there is plenty of space for us to use research to address pressing problems of society. And he expects our communication students, as well as our teachers of communication research, to collaborate and come up with genuine answers to the pressing problems about communication use in Nigeria. Let's move on. Mustafa, you should be getting ready. Yeah, Mustafa, are you there?
I am, Prof.
Yeah,
Thank you
so
very much.
Before you come on, Kayode, Idowu has taken his time to show how we do quantitative research using content analysis as an example. And now, before Kayode comes on, I think Chuks and Were may want to say one or two things about Lambe Kayode Mustafa, who today will be speaking on his behalf and on behalf of Megan Sobel. Megan is a friend of communication researchers in Africa. She's an associate professor of communication research at Regis University. But she's so passionate about doing research on African communication, she has offered to help our graduate students, as well as work with our lecturers in communication to design communication research studies on Nigeria, on West Africa, on the African continent. So on behalf of Megan, I'm inviting you to please respond to her call to collaborate with her so that she can assist you in doing serious research on African communication. She is so passionate about content analysis. You can say she eats and drinks content analysis, and it will be her joy to help you, to work with you, to produce some serious research on African communication. So, Chuks, over to you to allow Lambe Mustafa give us what he has prepared for himself and for Megan.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof, for standing in so eloquently for Professor Idowu Sobowale, even at a very short notice. Thank you, sir. We have this next presentation from Megan Sobel-Cohen and Lambe Kayode Mustafa. My apologies that I won't be able to present Professor Mustafa's citation. I think somewhere along the line I lost it. I don't know, I'm very sorry about it, but I still have that of Megan Sobel-Cohen, although Prof has somehow given us a little citation about her. Nevertheless, I will have the privilege to read it out much more clearly. Megan Sobel-Cohen is an associate professor in the Department of Communication and Master of Development Practice at Regis University in Denver, Colorado, USA. Dr. Cohen's research focuses on digital development and the role of news media in combating human rights abuses and humanitarian crises around the world, particularly in East Africa. She has given a TEDx talk about sex trafficking that has been viewed more than 1.5 million times and also published in journals such as Journalism and Mass Communication Quarterly, International Journal of Communication, African Journalism Studies, and International Communication Gazette. She holds a PhD from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, MA from the University of Denver, and BA from the University of Colorado at Boulder. It's my pleasure to welcome the doer to this presentation. I apologize once again that I could not be able to read Dr. Mustafa's bio at this moment. So Dr. Mustafa, please, can we hear
No problem. Thank you very much, Chuks.
Sorry, Professor Mustafa, I will do the honor if you don't mind. So
Okay,
Dr.
fine.
Lambe Kayode Mustafa is a senior lecturer in the Department of Mass Communication, University of Ilorin. He holds a bachelor and master degree in mass communication from the prestigious University of Lagos and a doctor of philosophy in communication from International Islamic University, Malaysia. He was a postdoctoral teaching fellow at University Science Malaysia, the University of Science, and a scientific advisor with the Department of Mass Communication, Faculty of Philology, Redden University, Moscow, Russia. Dr. Mustafa is the immediate past head, Department of Mass Communication, University of Ilorin from 2019 to 2022, and is an internationally published scholar, a member of many scientific editorial boards with many high-impact, top-quality peer-reviewed journals and conference papers to his credit. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you,
very
Prof.
much.
for that.
Thank you, Chooks and Chinedu. I really appreciate your quick intervention. I will be presenting on behalf of myself and Megan about a family of quantitative research, namely survey, content analysis, and experimental research. We are familiar with the fact that survey is one of the most popular research methods in quantitative methodologies. And of course, survey is a kind of research that provides quantitative description of trends, opinion, attitude, and at times even behavior of a population. And we don't really use the entire population when we are running a survey. What we do is to sample a particular part of the population that is representative of that population. Then our concern is what are those research questions that we can adapt or apply survey research to solve. Interestingly, survey is good for descriptive research. We can use survey to describe pattern in a particular phenomenon. What are the trends? What are the patterns? What are the kind of occurrences? And when we are doing this, we are only presenting data in terms of frequency and percentages. When we want to go further into using method, when we are trying to use statistic on measurement of central tendency or dispersion, we can go as far as using mean and standard deviation. All this will tell us certain pattern that emerge. For example, we want to know the number of students using social media to access political information. We can use survey to describe how many male, how many female, how many 100 level, 200 level, etc. So this is just a descriptive aspect. Then of course, survey can help us answer the question on relationship between and among variables in our studies. Here, we have two types of relationship we are looking at. This is just mere linear relationship. That is when a particular variable is going up, the other is either going up, which we call direct relationship, or the other is going down, which we call inverse relationship. It do happen in communication research where you see increase in social media use can lead to increased interest in political activity. And of course, we have causal relationship. When we are talking about causal relationship, this is one of the most problematic of social scientific research, where we normally want to believe that certain condition can cause another condition to occur. Most importantly, we are trying to predict that the independent variable will be causing a dependent variable. For example, we can assume that when you are high on social media use, you are likely to be active in politics. So by so doing, we are saying that social media use is an independent variable that can predict political activism. So, and of course, we do use survey to answer question of differences. We want to look at differences in two ways. Either differences in terms of independence. Are we looking at a set of category of people different in their score of certain independent variable? For example, we want to look, are male and female the same in terms of their social media use, or are they different? So we can use that. Then of course, we can use it to also instantiate difference in time. For example, in longitudinal studies, whether you are doing a panel study or you are doing a kind of study that span a long period of time where you want to see whether conditions change with time. So we can bring in survey research and we can, for example, have a time 1 and time 2 measurements and compare whether the behavior differ based on time difference that we have. Next slide, please. So our basic concern when we are running survey research is the instruments. We don't just design instruments anyhow to measure our variables. We must first and foremost be conscious of the purpose of the research. And of course, if the research is a theoretically driven research, we must be conscious of bringing concept and construct in the theory into our measurement. And of course, based on the hypothesis and research question that is driving the study. So most importantly, questionnaire is the basic instrument being used to collect data in survey research. And in designing questionnaire, we should be conscious of level of measurement previously described by Professor Kibu. Level of measurement matters a lot because it will help us to really analyze data based on the purpose of the research, as well as research question and our hypothesis we are going to answer. Of course, the SPSS package or any computer package that is being used to analyze data operates on principle of garbage in, garbage out. But if you are not very precise in terms of your measurement, you may get results which will not be relevant to your study. This is why you have to take designing your questionnaire very, very seriously. So in designing questionnaire, we normally have indicators, and these indicators of variable measurement can come in 3 dimensions. You can adopt validated scales. That is scales that have been used to measure the kind of construct you are measuring in the current research by previous researcher. You can adapt. If you feel that the context in which the previous researchers have used the scale is different from your context, you can adapt the scale to fit into your context. And of course, you can create measurement indicators. The problematics of that is that when you are creating new measures, you have to go through a lot of validating process like exploratory factor analysis, confirmatory factor analysis, which may be difficult for a beginner. So hence, it is always advisable that if you can adopt or adapt a scale, it will be better. And of course, why are we concerned about the instruments? We are concerned about the instrument because we are thinking about accuracy as well as reliability of our measures, which have been previously discussed also by Professor Kibu. And of course, in validating instruments, when you borrow measures or you have adopted a validated scale, then you are really at least push the extent of validity to a certain extent. And of course, you have to also instantiate the reliability. So most of the time, pilot testing is always been advised. You pilot test the instrument with a small population that is similar to the population you are going to collect the full-blown data from, so that at least it's not going to be a wasted effort. Make sure that the questions are understood by the respondents, and you are on the course to what you are trying to achieve. And of course, you have to collect your data. Either you collect it directly or indirectly through mail survey, and of course in the recent time online survey using SurveyMonkey. This is one of the best way. And once you have collected your data, you feed the data into the analytical tool. Perhaps you are using statistical package for social science, SPSS, or you can also feed it in Excel. And after doing that, you have to analyze your data using SPSS, which is always been described as the first generation analytical tool, or you can move up to a higher level using second generation like structural equation modeling, consisting of covariance-based structural equation modeling or partial least square structural equation modeling. Next slide. And we move to experiments. Experiment is more a technical method of quantitative research method, in the sense that in experiment, we are trying to manipulate certain independent variable to predict or determine the outcome of the behavior of people that are participating in the experiment. Most importantly, when we are trying to talk about causal relationship, that is, we are trying to say variable X cause variable Y. We want to be very sure, because in social scientific research, we are quite familiar with the philosophy of multiple causation. You cannot just single-handedly say that one particular variable causes one particular response. For example, you cannot just say social media use is the determinant of political participation. There could be a number of other variables. So when we are conducting experiments, we want to really streamline the causation part to see that it is the independent variable we are manipulating that is producing the dependent variable. And most importantly, in doing that, we normally operate like we may make the scientific environment where we control other variables that can be confounding in the outcome that we are trying to measure. And by so doing, what we are going to do is to randomize, create two groups. And these two groups will be labeled the test group as well as the control group. So the essence of this is to manipulate a particular group with the variable of interest and measure the outcome and use another indicator, maybe a placebo treatment for the control group, and see whether there is variation in the outcome. So if there is variation in the outcome in such a way that the experiment group behave in the way that we are expecting the outcome to be, then we can single-handedly say that it is the independent variable that is responsible for that influence. Next slide. Okay, content analysis. Okay. Content analysis. Content analysis is another family member of quantitative content analysis, particularly quantitative content analysis, which is a systematic assignment of communication content to category according to rules, analysis of relationship according to Rivel, Lacy, and Vico 2005. In quantitative content analysis, we are trying to hack into the call of Harold Laswell in his Faber model. Who says what? The says what is the content of the communication. It is believed that what is being said is as powerful as who is saying it in communication parlance. More importantly, because communication messages or narratives are powerful in their influence because of the possibility of the fact that perspectives are usually being weaved into communication narrative. And this perspective can influence the perception the reader or the consumer of this communication artifact will be having around them. So most importantly, quantitative content analysis helps us to systematically and scientifically assign values to some of these communication content and measure audience. So most importantly, 10 steps in communication analysis, content analysis were identified by Weimer and Dominics, which include formation of research question or hypothesis. What is it are you trying to look at? That must be the basis because of coding category, development of measuring, variable measurement and all what have you. So after that, you define the universe. What is the content you are interested in? Is it a stack of newspaper? Is it a collection of radio programs, a collection of television program or film? So you have to have this universe in your mind. You see, when you select a newspaper, are you selecting for how many months, 6 months, 1 year, how many newspaper, 2 newspaper, 3 newspaper? So you have to aggregate, which now form the population. And after you have done that, you have to select the sample that you are going to be using. How many of these contents will be of use in your study? Why? Because we at times we do have humongous communication content that we may not be able to run through for a particular study. So for that reason, you have to select. And there are quite a number of techniques by which we can select content. It could be constructed weak, it could be purposive, it could be simple random, depending on the purpose for which the research is being carried out for. Next slide, please. Then after that, you select and define the unit of analysis. What's going to be the unit of analysis? For example, if you want to content analyze newspaper, are you content analyzing the entire content, which will be a Boolean for you? So you can decide to either content analyze news story based on the purpose of your research. For example, we are in the era of political campaign. We are interested in political campaign of the candidate. So news, it can be straight news about political campaign, or we can just say editorial. We can even say the front page of the newspaper. So you have to define your unit of analysis. Then having defined your unit of analysis, the next thing is for you to construct the category to be content analyzed. What category are you content analyzing? You have to come up with the category. For example, when we pick a news about content of campaign of a particular party, we may want to look at the issues being discussed. We want to identify what are the issues being discussed. We want to identify whether the attributes of the contestant is being played out in the story. It could be this content that you are interested in. So you have to define the category so that at least you can assign symbol to the category. If there are 10 issues being discussed in the campaign, then that means one issue will take a figure, another will take another figure in that order, so that when you accumulate this, you can, quantitatively present the data in such a way that we know how much or how many of the news is about security, how many of the news is about economy, etc. So you do that. Then, of course, you come up with your quantification category. Quantification category is very essential here because, like we mentioned about level of measurement, we are interested in, are you trying to measure nominally or using ordinal measure or ratio measure? You have to bring in this. It is important so that at least when you are doing your analysis, it will define the kind of analytical tool you are going to use as well as the statistic that you are going to use. Then you train the coder. It is very essential in content analysis that you develop the coding book, of course, which is always the dictionary of the assignments. How do you define each of the content you want to code? So you now train the coder to use this coding book as well as the coding sheets to see that at least they understand the definition of each of the contents and they can identify it in the content you want to code. So having done that, you have to, after you have trained them, you are interested in making sure that at least these two people or more that will be involved in the coding get the message straight, such that at the end of the day, you have to test intercoder agreements. There must be agreement to a certain degree using various forms of statistical analysis like Cohen-Kappa, Nodendorf, and Scott-Fye, quite number of different analytical tools that will tell you that whether you are there or not, those who coded the content really got the message and they have done it the way it is being determined to be done. Then, of course, after that, you do the coding. Then you analyze the data, and from your analysis, you draw a conclusion as well as search for indication about the content that you have coded. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Kayode, for that wonderful presentation. You worked within the time between 12 and 15 minutes. That's very good. So we now move to quantitative research by Dr. Gomez. Let me tell us a little bit more about Dr. Gomez. Now, Dr. Remy Gomez was the director of research at the University of Illinois at Chicago College of Medicine. He is currently the senior biostatistician for one of Chicago's most comprehensive cancer treatment centers. He holds a PhD .
Jukes, I think we lost your audio. Okay, so a little technical glitch there. Dr. Gomez, I will take over and I will read your citation until Jukes is able to join us. So Romy Gomez was the director of research at the University of Illinois at Chicago College of Medicine. He is currently the senior biostatistician for one of Chicago's most comprehensive cancer treatment centers. He holds his PhD in applied statistics and has been a consulting biostatistician for the past decade. Romy enjoys research that has direct impact on the population. He was once a journalist and an international news correspondent. In his spare time, Romy goes to local hospitals to train medical doctors and residents on how to understand and apply published literature. And thanks for joining us today. Now on over to you, Romy.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So my presentation is going to be taking a few items from my seniors who have already delved well into the content we've been talked about today. So I'm going to go back to the code book. The reason why I'm going back to the code book is because I as a statistician, I'm on the receiving side of the data. So it's a common mistake or common error or things that I see every day on data that is sent to me for analysis. First of all, there's something that I would like to convey, that when you decide that you want to do research, regardless of what type of research is it, whether you are doing survey, content analysis, whatever you are doing, it is very important that you don't go on this trajectory alone. There's something called research team that you want to be able to put together. So if you have an expertise in a specific part of that research, you have that, and then go look for other people who have other things that they can add to your research. And in that search, if you're able to bump into a statistician, it's always a great thing, because a statistician will help you with your design on set, so that you're collecting the data that you want to collect to arrive at the conclusion that you want for your research. If you don't have a good design, regardless of what instrument you have, regardless of how much expertise you have in the area, your research is not going to end up well. And your results, your interpretation, all are going to be faulty, because the design does not match the intent or the hypothesis that you're trying to test. So the code book that you give to your coders to be able to code your survey or your research, sometimes you need to give that, right, to the statistician to help you with the analysis of the data. But sometimes, in other times, you have the code book, but then you also have other variables or other things that you added down the road that you needed the statistician to be able to know, so that he can help you with the analysis if you are not doing the analysis yourself. So those things you add to the code book to make it a data dictionary. So code book, data dictionary, they're used interchangeably, but the data dictionary has to comprise everything that you have in the data. If it's in Excel form, it's in XPSS, whatever it is, it has to have every variable that you need for the data analysis to be well performed. Now, the other thing I want to touch on is the validated questionnaire type. I've seen quite a number of research that come to me, and the data comes, and we are trying to say, analyze perception, voters' perception on, on some political elections. But perception, this particular perception, voters' perception, has been dealt with in the past for many, many years. So there have been so many data, or so many surveys that have already been questioned, that have been designed and validated, that you could use. So instead of restarting afresh and redesigning a new survey because you are in a different environment, no, you should try as much as possible. Get that validated survey and see how you can adapt it to your population. And that is very important, because if the survey has already been validated, then when it comes to the data analysis portion, there's so many things that you don't need to do again. You don't need to go look for any validation tool. You don't need to convince the reader that this is the survey that you need to use to be able to arrive at the conclusion that you want to arrive at. And to be able to do that, you need a good literature review. If you don't go into the literature, you don't see what else is out there, what has been published as far as, faculty strike has been concerned in Canada, in the US, in Germany, in anywhere, what has been published there, what research is already out there. Being able to identify all those research, collect them, the manuscript, and read them and understand the design that they use will definitely help your own research as far as teachers strike is concerned. So being able to do a good literature review is key to the success of your research. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is the direction of questionnaire. So if you take a questionnaire, for instance, whether you are designing it or you are using a validated questionnaire, the validated questionnaire, if you are using it exactly as it was already published, then you have nothing to do about direction of a question. But if you are changing it a little bit to suit your own research, then you need to pay attention to what we call the direction of the question. And the direction of the question is simply whether the questions within the instrument are asked in an affirmative, interrogative, any manner that you want to follow that same manner. So let's say I'd say, I dislike pineapple, and I have is a Likert scale question, and I have agree or strongly agree, neutral, strongly disagree, and disagree. Well, if such a question is in the instrument, and you want to ask another question to go in the same direction, you cannot say I like bananas and then put agree, disagree, and you have to say I dislike banana as well, so that those two questions are in the negation. So you don't have a question about how to validate or how to even do an analysis later. Can we go to the next slide, please? Great. And then I want to talk a little bit also about the research methods that we use. And like Dr. Akibo said earlier, you can start from as simple as frequencies, mean, standard deviation. You use frequencies. You use frequencies for categorical variables, things nominal, ordinal. You use frequencies for those. And if we go back to the type of variables that we talked about earlier, we have the ordinal, the nominal, the ratio, the interval. The best information, the best one that we have is the ratio type of variable. And the ratio type of variable contains the best information about the data. Let's take the variable age, for instance. Because your research question says that you are trying to see the perception of students on, or the perception of a particular political bill on students of a certain group age. Well, if you start your research by categorizing the ages of the student right away, then when you get down the road and you realize that your categorization does not give you the answer to your questions, then you can come back and say, okay, I want to find out the age of the respondent now, because you already collected, you already said, okay, what is the category of age, what category of age are you in? And you put 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, and then you let participant check, right? But instead of doing that, just what if you ask, how old are you? Simple. And then people write their numbers in there. And then at that point, when you get to data analysis portion, you can ask the statistician, or you yourself, you can categorize the data in such a way that you can get answers to your question. So in that sense, when you categorize your data and you said, okay, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, and then 40 to 50, and you realize that there is no relationship, there's no difference in maybe perceptions, right? Then you can come back and say, okay, let's recategorize maybe, every 5 years, or maybe, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, maybe there's a difference between, those two, or 20 to 25. So you can recategorize if you collect the variable at the most precious level, which is the ratio type of variable. Okay, again, not every variable can be collected at the ratio type, but if you can, try as much as possible to collect it at a ratio level. Then after you work with the one-on-one, each variable getting frequencies, mean, standard deviation, then you go to the two level where you take two variables and you're trying to see what's the relationship between them. So that's when you have, all categorical or nominal or ordinal, you have what we call the chi-square if you want to see if there's any association between two categorical variable. When the cells or the representation of each level is too small, we use what is called the Fisher's exact test. And if you have a continuous variable like an age, and you want to see the relationship of age between male and female, that's when you use tests like t-test or Wilcoxon test when you don't have a normality in your data, like Dr. Kiwo said earlier. Then from there, you go to the next level, which is the multivariable analysis, where if your objective is to predict, then you go for a regression. And if it's to reduce the dimension of the data, you do principal component analysis, and so on and so forth. Looking at, can we go to the next slide, please? I hope I'm on track as far as time is concerned here. Now I want to talk a little bit about questions, research questions, and help, because I love teaching research. And research question is usually something that I spend a lot of time on, because I realize once you have that well written and well defined, then your research goes very easily, even in design, in data collection, in every step of the way. So if you take on a question like the impact of the ASUU strike on the quality of life of all stakeholders, versus if you take the question that says the local impact of the ASUU strike on a sleeping pattern of undergraduate students. There's a precision here that was not in the first question, right? All stakeholders, what is that? What is quality of life? Is he sleeping? Is he eating? Is it sickness? What is it, right? Defining in a very precise manner each word that is in your research question is vital to the success of your research. Now, if you go ahead and you say the regional impact, so now we are not interested in just the local impact, that the little area where we live in, or the area of the strike, or the area where the campus is located. We are looking at what is the impact of the strike in the local economy, in the regional economy, in the market in the area, in other colleges or universities in the area. So there's another level of degree of precision that you are looking for here. Then you go to the relationship between the length of a teacher strike and future academic performance. Then there is a different level, again, of precision that you are looking for here. What is future academic performance? Of who? Right? Future academic performance of who? Is it undergraduate student, graduate student, everybody in the university, elementary school student? Who are those whose future academic performance are you interested in, right? So precision is very important as far as your research questions are concerned. The nature, the dimension of the strike over time. What do you mean over time? How much time are we talking about? What do you mean by dimension? What do you mean by nature, right? So a research question that says nature and dimension of strike over time is completely vague, right? Because there are so many things that need to be defined. That's nature need to be defined, dimension need to be defined, strike, we know what it is. Over time, what is it, right? And then we go to perception, people's perception of teachers strike versus medical personnel strike, right? Who are your people? What population are you talking about? Does it mean we can just go to the market and get anybody? Since my mom sells in the market, I can take my survey to my mom's area and collect information, get the people in the market to fill. And then I said, okay, I've answered a research question about people's perception of teacher strike versus medical. No, right? So you need another level of precision here as far as people is concerned, even though it's a simple word, but it needs to be defined here to be able to understand.
You have an extra 3 minutes to go.
Oh, great, thank you. Because I really want to touch on a few questions that I saw in the survey that was filled in preparation for this. And one of the common questions that I saw was statistical software. There was a lot of questions about software. Statistical software, it doesn't matter which one you want to use. You could use R, SPSS, SAS, Python, whatever it is. All statistical software will give you the same result as far as your data analysis is concerned. So just stick to which one you know and use that to do your research. So if SPSS give you a mean age of 32, if you go to SAS, it will also give you, with the same data, it's going to give you the mean age of 32. It's not going to give you 34 because it's SAS, no. So whatever it is that you use, or whatever it is that you know, please just stick to that. And there was a few other questions about sample being representative of the general population. Well, one of the main things that the question that you honestly want to ask yourself about sample being representative of the population or the general population that you are studying is honestly answer the question, did everybody in my sample had the same chance of being included? I gave an example earlier about your mom selling in the market, and you go to the market, you follow your mom to the market and pick people there and have them answer. That's a selection bias right there, because if you take John in Abeokuta and you take Jack or Andrea in Lagos, they did not have the same chance of being included in your data. Only the people in a specific near your mom's merchandise, plot or whatever, are able to get a higher chance of being included. So if you can honestly answer that question and say, yes, everybody in this data had the same chance of being included in my data, then you have solved that representativeness problem. The other thing that I want to talk about is do not think you have to do it all by yourself. There's a lot of questions about how do I know it all? How do I get it all done? The research is not a one-person business. It is, if you are in a society, then there is a fact that God brought you, or you are in that society for a specific reason, or you are in that department for a specific reason. Even if you are not in a specific department, you have other people that have other knowledge that they can bring to your research. So always reach out and know that your research, even though it's your research, you can always use expertise from somewhere, from someone. And among those people, if you can always get a statistician, at least in the design state of your research, it will serve you a lot of good. It will serve you so much that at the end of the day, you will be happy about the data that you end up collecting and the ability to analyze that data and come to conclusive results. And with that, I will end my presentation and pass the baton to.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gomez, for that wonderful one. Indeed, some people are already indicating that they are statisticians. I mean, from the participants, I'm sure that when they get the materials and go through them, they'll find it very, very useful, and they may want to link up to get more insights. Thank you once again, and we now want to go to the next presenter. That's a summary of all we have done this evening. Then it's going to be handled by Dr. Nuhu Dirasu Gapsiso, who unavoidably is not present. However, I will go ahead and read his citation. Nuhu Gapsiso is an associate professor and head, Department of Mass Communication, University of Maiduguri, Nigeria. He holds a PhD in mass communication. Nuhu resides and lectures in Maiduguri. His teaching and research interests are in public relations, media and human rights, print media, and new media. Nuhu is a member of the African Council for Communication Education, as well as the Association of Communication Scholars and Professionals in Nigeria. He is a consultant to many NGOs and has served as a resource person as well as facilitator in several workshops in Nigeria. He has published widely in local and international journals. It is my pleasure to introduce Nuhu to this, this gathering, even though he's not going to be here present. Notwithstanding, we have somebody, also a very high scholar, who is sitting in for him, who will now do the presentation. Is Professor Mustafa Malam. He himself graduated with a first degree in mass communication from Bayero University, Kano. Thereafter, he went for his MSc degree at the University of Jos, Nigeria, before proceeding to United Kingdom, where he obtained a PhD in communications policy from City University, London. Professor Malam began his academic career in the University of Maiduguri before joining the Department of Mass Communication, Bayero University, Kano, as the senior lecturer in 2003. From there, he rose to become a professor. His teaching interests include communication theories and public relations. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Professor Mustafa Malam to give us this summary and conclusion of what we have done today. You're welcome, sir.
Professor Malan, network seems to be a problem.
Okay, let me represent Professor Malam and Dr. Gapsiso, since they are my brothers and we've been working together. Well, their task is to summarize what you've had this evening. And I will begin with my own presentation, which provided an overview of mixed methods and gave you an introduction to quantitative research approaches. The lesson we've been trying to teach in the last 5 months is that social research is best done using both quantitative and qualitative methods. And today I try to emphasize 2 aspects, which are measurement and the value of your data. By measurement, we mean the attachment of numbers to the phenomena you're examining. If you are looking at ASU strike, there are many aspects of ASU strike which can be subjected to measurement. How long has it lasted? How many students are affected? How many students are positively disposed? How many are critical? What is the government saying? And how is ASU responding? All these can be measured. And then the other aspect is parametric and non-parametric. When we measure, we use nominal measure or we can use ordinal measure or interval measure and ratio measure, as Romy has explained to us this evening. And level of measurement guides us in choosing the kinds of appropriate statistical tools that can be applied in analyzing our data. So my presentation was very simple, that quantitative research methods complement our qualitative methods. Going forward, we don't expect any Nigerian graduate student to do their thesis or dissertation without trying to explore how they can use both quantitative and qualitative methods. And remember, we said it's not mixed methods just because you are using qualitative and quantitative. You must logically and strategically select which quantitative will complement what qualitative. And then we listen to Idowu Chobowale, who is the grandfather of public opinion polling in Nigeria. Nobody had ever done public opinion polling before Idowu introduced it in 1978 on his return from Syracuse University. Many of you have heard about Max McCombs, the apostle of gatekeeping and agenda setting. Actually, Idowu studied under him, and in Nigeria, Idowu can be a replica of Max McCombs. So Idowu told us that content analysis and opinion polling are two good methods we can use to measure what is happening in society. Two areas we can use them today will be in the forthcoming elections. What is happening? What are the critical issues that are important to our electorate? And are those issues reflected in the media? Or are the media guiding the people to think about those issues? And then Idowu talked also about content analysis as an important tool for determining the state of the media. So Idowu's presentation is straightforward. It's important for us to recognize the value of content analysis and also opinion polling. Then we listen to Megan Sobel Ohin and Mustafa Lambe Kayode talk about patterns in data and why it's important for us to go beyond just describing frequencies and percentages and tease out relationships, whether the relationships are direct or indirect, or whether one is going up as the other one is also going up, or they are going in opposite directions. They also give us the various ways we can analyze data, whether simply or in sophisticated levels. The presentation is appropriate, particularly for doctoral students who want to show that they understand the value of qualitative and quantitative data. And then finally, we've just listened to Romy Gomez. Gomez, even though he's now an American, is actually from Cotonou, our neighboring country, our neighboring city to Lagos. He's a Beninois. And listening to him, you wouldn't know that his primary language is actually French and not English. But being a good journalist, he can adapt very well. In fact, he was a lecturer at the Ghana Institute of Journalism before he proceeded to the US. And I'm proud to say he graduated with his PhD in applied statistics from my university, North Dakota State University, which has been very active in supporting our interest in mixed method research. So for Romy Gomez, two critical things are the value of planning your research carefully, because if you make a mistake in the design, it will be impossible for you to correct this in the analysis. Secondly, it's important for you to have a team. Don't work alone. Even if you are doing your master's or PhD in a communication department, think of working with other students. You can collect a huge data set from which you extract your report, and other students will extract their own reports. And also, team building may require you to go outside your department and talk to people who are in sociology or in education or in statistics. But don't go it alone. And then Romy gave us various statistical methods. His doctorate is in applied statistics, and he did a good job in simplifying it instead of talking to us at his own level. So I think on balance, we are lucky that technology hasn't disappointed us too much today, and we've been exposed to very interesting materials. The materials we gave you today will take more than 16 weeks in a semester to teach a class of research methods. Lesson Omona, mute yourself. So the materials we gave you in 1 hour actually can be stretched for 16 weeks, meeting 3 times every week, and you still won't exhaust it. So we haven't tried to tell you everything you need, but we've tried to sensitize you to the need for you to be inquisitive, for you to know that there are materials out there that are accessible to you. And all of us presenting today are eager to work with you. It's not only Megan who has expressed the desire to collaborate with you. Every presenter today is eager to work with you in whatever you are doing, try to take advantage of our knowledge in these areas. That's why we are doing this. On a final note, before Professor Mba comes on and talks about what's coming next month, I would like to remind you that all the materials we've ever presented with in the last 5 months are available. And in due course, we will put them all together as one single package. But Professor Mba has generously provided some of them individually. And she will tell you how you can access them, download them, print them, and be able to refer to them from time to time. Finally, it's our pleasure to be doing this, and we hope you'll continue to take advantage of our interest to make sure that our students and our lecturers become more interested in quantitative research methods as well as qualitative approaches. Jokes, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Prof, for once again stepping in to save the situation. This is the third time you are doing it and doing it so masterfully. We are very grateful. And then I think as it is now, we have to move to the next level, which is to take any questions and answers or any comments. We have to start by raising our virtual hands to indicate interest, to ask questions, and then when you are recognized, you unmute yourself and talk. I'm hoping that this will take the next 15, 20 minutes or thereabout. So we are on that level now. Anybody?
I have a question was sent to me on the chat here. It says, Dr. Gomez, what do you do when your respondent evade the question asking them to indicate their age? Experience has shown that respondents prefer to indicate the age category they belong. Okay, so there are a few ways of dealing with this. If age is vital to your research question, and you are at the analysis stage when you realize this, then you have to trash these people from your sample to continue. Now, if you cut this, or you wanted to prevent this from the design stage, then you set your questionnaire in such a way that the respondent will not be able to move forward without answering the question. If age, again, not age category, if age is vital to your research question. So there are different ways of setting your questions if some responses are vital to the success of your research. I think most survey tools give you the ability to enforce or to make sure people respond before they proceed. And some, they also give you the option to select questions, to make some questions optional, and people can still proceed whether they answer it or not. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
Okay.
But I assume that is in the case when the questionnaire is sent electronically. I think that's what you mean.
Yes.
Sometimes when the questionnaire is sent physically, that response will still apply?
So if you are in front of the respondent, then you need to come up with your marketing skills to try to convince that respondent why the age is vital to the success of this research. And that's why I like the comment that Dr. Akibo said in his presentation, where you need to have all your coders or all your everybody helping you on your research to be on the same page. You have to train them. And I learned this, not the hard way, but somewhat the hard way, when I was working with Dr. Akibo before, where we have to get everybody to speak the same language before we send them out to go collect data. right? So if you are in front of the person, then you need to find ways again to convince them to answer this question so that you don't end up trashing them. But if upon everything you do, you still don't get anything, still don't get the age, then you have to, exclude them down the road. But again, the other thing you can, in addition to everything else, you can tell them if they are 30 and, they don't want to tell you they are 30, they can tell you they are 29, right? It's okay, 28, if that's what they want to do. But you need a number there, otherwise they are not going to be included. Again, that's if age again is vital to your research question. Sometimes it's not vital. It's something that you need to be able to generalize your findings. So you have to weigh, and that's why a team is also very important in this. So it's not just your opinion. You ask others in the team, in the research team, how do I handle this? What do we do in this kind of situation? And everybody who is in the team can advise you on how to go about such.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Another person is raising his hands, Dr. Isaac Imo. Please go ahead with your question or comment. Isaac Imo, Temba something.
Hello, can you all hear me now?
Okay, Imotel. Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everyone. It's evening here. So I have 3 questions. First one is about mixed method. It sounded to me like a suggestion that if a research doesn't imbibe mixed method, then it's not good research enough. I would like clarification on that. Is it not possible that a good research can be conducted with one of the methods and perhaps leave it as recommendations or suggestions to further studies for other research to other researchers to also conduct further research using other methods? That's one question. Second is on the nomenclature of categories and units of analysis in content analysis. Over here, across time during my undergraduate and postgraduate, we're fond of using categories, and then you have units of analysis under each category. But I listened to this presentation and I observed that the presenter, I think is Dr. Mustafa, swapped it using units first before, and then categories for analysis coming under units. Is there a hard and fast way around it, or can it be flexible? And then talking about categories and units of analysis, either way the answer may go, can one actually delineate it to suit a given research? Say, okay, in my research, I'm dealing with alphabets and the categories are A, B, C, and I'm looking at A black, A white, A red as units of analysis? Or must it be that it will be that I'm looking at text under A or pictures under A? Because I once had a conversation and someone sort of appeared adamant that units have to be certain categories that every researcher recognizes as such. So I would like to understand if these things can be delineated flexibly, provided the definitions are clear about that. Question number 3 goes to our statistician, the person presented and emphasized on statistics. I listened to that part that said, the part he said that if you have a question flowing according to a certain gradation, say dislike, then you don't have to then introduce a question that says, do you like? The question has to be phrased to align with the flow. Now, there is a tendency of self-reported opinion to try to be more intelligent than the researcher. And I've had cause to be innovative to sometimes vary the nature of my phrasing. But in doing that, I usually will validate the instrument and see how the variation code.
Dr. Isaac, could you please round up with?
Yes, so what I'm trying to put across here is basically instance where I have to validate to ensure that even though I vary, it does not affect the responses. Is it not possible to use that kind of method instead of insisting that the questions must flow in a particular tone? Those are the 3 questions I have. Thank you. I'm done. I'm asking the questions. Thank you.
Well, let me take the first question of whether it's recommended for you to use mixed methods where you can use only one. Yes, it is. It's recommended, but not required. The reason why it's recommended is because quantitative methods are very good for precision and replicability, as I told you before. So why wouldn't you want to be precise if you can? Why do you want to lose the characteristic of being precise? Simply because you prefer qualitative alone. So in many cases, it's recommended, but not required. In Nigerian universities today, there are not too many lecturers who are competent to direct theses or dissertations using quantitative methods. And therefore, you wouldn't be encouraged to use them both. But if you can, your research will stand a better chance of being published in more reputable journals internationally because you have used qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative is very often regarded to be superior, but it's not. The reason why it's regarded to be superior is because of the precision. And you can test hypotheses. You can show levels of significance. These are not possible with qualitative. But qualitative is very valuable. It's very important because very often quantitative cannot tell you why. It can tell you what. It can tell you who. You need qualitative to be able to tease out, why do you do this? Why did you choose APC? Why did you not choose Unilag? So why questions are best addressed qualitatively. And then explaining the results of your quantitative research, the interpretation very often relies on historical contextualization of this phenomenon. Why do Nigerians do what they do? When they talk about the Nigerian factor, it is Nigerian culture. And much of it is not measurable. It's qualitative. And so ideally, if you can help it, combine them both. They are not more difficult than when you use only one. So Kayode, you want to deal with what they talked about, categories and units of analysis. I understood what you said, but I don't want to answer all 3 questions. So Kayode. I think we lost Kayode. Well, in content analysis, it's important for you to have broad categories. Okay, yeah, we can hear you now.
So in content analysis, we first and foremost have the unit of analysis because this is the category in which the content will be classified. So, and I put example of like you want to content analyze a newspaper, for example. You have to determine, is the entire newspaper your unit of analysis, the basis on which you are going to be selecting different content categories. Or you can even choose news story, just a single news story, or even paragraphs within news story can be your unit of analysis, meaning that the content you are going to be classifying will come from that unit. Then the content categories are the issues that you are interested in coding. For example, we are in election time, and we do know that most of election study used to look at issues and attributes of the candidates as they are being reported in the newspaper. So if, for example, news story, that is a news article, is my unit of analysis. Within that unit of analysis, I need categories of issues being discussed about a particular candidate. For example, in this election, we could have corruption being an important issue. We can have security being an important issue. Economy can be an important issue. So each of these become the content category that I'll be looking for in the unit of analysis news article. And for that reason, we are going to be able to quantify, for example, if you're having 3 issues, one issue will take 1, another one 2, another one 3, so that at the end of the day, we can aggregate the number of these issues as they appears in a number of news articles, and be able to now describe the pattern or use it for some other maybe inferential analysis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think those questions have been trashed out. Another person is raising his hand.
The last question in that set of 3 has to do with the direction, if I understood correctly. When I said, if somebody said, I dislike pineapple, and then if you are setting question in that same group, you should say, I dislike banana instead of I like banana, and then agree, disagree, and so on and so forth. The reason why you need to do it that way is because when it comes to designing questionnaire, you are designing questionnaire with the intent that you are going to have a good reliability at the end of the day. And having a good reliability means that the question that you are designing within the same group, they are all talking the same language. So if you make a question in a different direction than all the other questions in that group, you're going to have your, what we call the comeback alpha exploded, or just becoming almost nothing. And you need a comeback alpha of, depending on where you are, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. But if your question does not have the same direction like others, you are going to end up with a comeback alpha that is way smaller than everything else. And what that is saying is that this particular question, does not belong to this family. That's all it is saying. So that's why you need to, if you are putting question, that is not in a validated survey. This is in a survey that you are designing from scratch. And if you want to maintain reliability, you will have to do it that way. Otherwise, it is not going to belong to that family. You might have to take it from that family and go put it in a different family to be able to have a good reliability. I hope that answers your question.
Prof. Gomez, can I add this?
Absolutely.
In instances, there are instances where people use this kind of negative positive question to check. So in that instance, what is expected of a researcher is that you have to reverse the code before you go into the analysis. For example, if you have been wording your items in positive direction and you just introduce a particular negative dimension item into it, just to check that people are not just checking the box. So at the end of the day, before you go into your full data analysis, you reverse the code in such a way that what is the higher code in the positively worded question become the lower code in the negatively worded question. And that will help us to solve the problem of reliability that you have just talked about. Thank you very much.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, I can't say it any better. Thank you very much.
Are we done with the set of questions? Okay, let's hear about the Dipoko, if the question is still waiting. Dipoko.
Yes, Professor.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Professor, for this opportunity. I am a student of Pan-African University, a PhD student. And I seriously have a problem about just presenting the facts that I have in the field, the data that I collected in the field, putting it practically through content analysis or SPSS. Actually, I've read a lot about it, but I don't know how to practically do it so I can have accurate results. It's really difficult for me, sir. Thank you.
Okay, who is going to attempt an answer? I think Gomez.
Well, I have
Okay.
an idea.
Okay.
Can I?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. So, if I understand the question clearly, it applies to how to export data from a source, perhaps maybe non-electronically or electronically, onto the software that then used to then analyze the data. You see, initially there was a comment by the statistician about research questions and precision, and that connects to variables. So if you are able to properly understand variables, define them, understand them from the beginning of your factor that into your data, and then the data itself is valid, you can then export that into the software. But what you have to do first and foremost is to improve your skill set of how to use this software. Otherwise, you may have to consult a professional who is very familiar with the software. And of course, obviously with the related software you want to use. And of course, you can then decide the scale of your skill set, whether you're familiar with Excel or SPSS as the case may be. Once you have come to that level of whether you are familiar with the software or not, then you need the next thing to do. If you're familiar with the software, you must then be very disciplined to stick with
Losing you out, sir. Losing you out.
You hear me now?
Very friendly. Maybe you just round up. Please just round up quickly so that.
Okay, so basically what I'm saying is that's all you need at the level of what you can do to use data that you put into your software and analyze your data. Other than that, you may have to like partner with someone who has those competencies in software adoption for data analysis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for giving us an answer to that question. I think on that note, I'll just tell the person that asked that question to get in touch with the organizer, JPDS series, I think, at unn.edu.ng. I'm sure they'll be able to give you a resource person or link you up to somebody that will help you more in it. Professor Mba, do we still have time to move on? Continue?
What we'll do is we'll collect all the questions and our resource persons will respond, and we will also send them out as part of the participants package. At this time, we can go on to the vote of thanks, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, thank you so much. So that is it for now. We move to the next item, that is a vote of thanks to be taken by one of our postgraduate students in the Department of Mass Communication, University of Nigeria, Mr. Jonathan. Please, if he's available now, just give us a brief vote of thanks and then we will close.
Okay, thank you so much. Indeed, that was a wonderful session, but the brevity of the presentation is worthy of commendation. And then to our resource persons, from Dr. Gomez to Professor Kibo, who is also our mentor and grand patron, to Professor Shobowole, Dr. Sobe Cohen, and Dr. Gapsiso, and then Professor Mustafa Malam, who were all ably represented. We thank you all for coming through. In fact, your inputs, we are all enriching. We've come to understand, among other things, that measurements and precision are all key, in conducting quantitative research. Well, what about our moderator, cool, calm, and collected, Dr. Chus? Thanks so much for delivering as always. I did special mention also to our team, ably led by Professor Chinedu Afibomba, who work assiduously behind the scene to ensure the successful hosting of these webinars. We say a very big thank you. And to you, the participants, availing yourselves of the opportunity to be part of this webinar subsequently will be worth it. Indeed, it doesn't get any better, even as the November edition promises to be a memorable one as well. And we don't want to miss out on that. Also do well to tell someone about it. Thank you so much, even as we meet again virtually like this in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that succinct vote of thanks. And on that note, I want to thank everybody that has come here today, participants from across the globe. I can see Mr. Richard Emmanuel himself is also a guru in content analysis. I know he did so well for me when I was doing my master's at University of Lagos. Dr. Professor Richard, we are welcome. Thank you for joining this. I'm sure one of these days you are going to come on board to talk to us on this same subject matter. I want to thank everybody, other participants. We had a good outing today, and I'm sure this time next month, we're going to even double the attendance because you can see the people that are coming, the resource persons from all over the world. We're grateful to everybody, grateful to our coordinator, Professor Mba. Too much for you, too much. So we're looking forward to the next outing in November, first Friday of November. Everything you need to know will be communicated, as time goes on. But for the things we've done today, all the slides will be mailed to all participants. And that is one of the benefits of being here, live, to hear what is being said and then to collect the slides thereafter. And as I'm sure the Prof has promised that all the recordings will also be shared in the next couple of hours. So on that note, I want to thank you once again. Look forward to seeing you in November, first Friday in November, probably the last one. God bless you for your time, for your money, and for your energy. Thank you, Professor Kiwo. I'm sure you'll be with us next month. God bless you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Chooks, and thank you to everybody who's been part of this. I'd like to invite anybody who would be interested in joining our resource group to contact us using the email address, and we'll talk with you and set something up. JPDS is committed to capacity building professionally and also in the academia. So on that note, stay safe, and it's a Thanksgiving weekend here. So happy Thanksgiving in advance. Take care and God bless.
Take care. God bless you.